Shalom, shalom. As always, call her law Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Waha, Wakakwadash. Shalom to the elect that are scattered into all nations, to the Israel of God, namely to you men that are preaching and teaching the gospel, admonishing, exhorting, bringing comfort through the scriptures, admonishing, and so much more through the spirit. Shalom to you all, continue, and is much needed. So, getting into this one, just something quick, and really it's a lesson that I previously did, but ultimately didn't put out, but through further consideration and meditating on the topic, and then ultimately also pretty much the furtherance of this current day. If you can hear the background noises, I'm not sure how much it's gonna pick up on, but these rains, these storms, that's pretty much been the inspiration, to do this. Throughout this past week, the brother Padai, he put out a few lessons just on topic of storms, and they've been in various realms, but through that I've just been meditating on how storms, they bring forth much, but ultimately, for this specific lesson, I just want to zone into the fact that it's a lot of growth that happens through storms. It's a lot of growth that happens through storms. So when you think about the times when storms come, a lot of times it disables your ability, to get certain things done. It serves sometimes as an impediment. You don't want to be out driving. You don't want to get out, can't be necessarily walking when it's raining, just in the open, especially when it's storming and flooding and stuff. It's lightning. You don't truly want to be out in that. Sometimes you get stuck out in it, but that's not an ideal situation. But the point being is, through storms, you're able to see and learn much and grow much. So I'm going to title this one, Growth Through Storms. And I'm going to kick it off here in the book of Proverbs, chapter 24, and verse 10. And this reads, "If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small." So if you fainting through adversity, and adversity is something that is an obstacle. It's a hardship. Something that you ultimately supposed to be getting through, which we understand the Lord told us that our lives would come with much adversity. When the Lord speaks about the straight gate, that's what is being spoken about. A straight is an obstacle. It's an adversity. It's something put in front of you to slow you down, if you will, but ultimately the goal is to get through it. It's just like the scripture that tells you a righteous man, he falleth down 7 times, right? But he's going to get back up. Ultimately meaning, you go through stuff, you have situations, you have dealings, but ultimately you're supposed to power through them and get up and continue through. So again, Proverbs 24 and 10, "If thou faint in the day of adversity," and fainting is falling. "If thou faint in the day of adversity," and falling is ultimately you stand down. Falls are going to happen, but again, getting up is the goal. "If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small." So it's saying, if you fall when adverse times come, when storms come, because that'll be pretty much what we're going to use to serve as the adversity for this specific lesson. When you fall when storms come, you completely just lose it, crash out. When certain situations come that you can't handle, it's actually signifying something. So again, if thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. And now we have to zone in on what is our strength. What is strength? according to the scriptures, according to the Lord and his word. So it's the book of Matthew chapter 7 and verse 24. And you can see the heading in the Blue Letter Bible to Matthew 7 and 24 is what? The two foundations. And over in the NLT on the right-hand side of the screen, it says building on a solid foundation, right? So you can see it's talking about strength, because any building, which we're likening to buildings, we're likening to structures. You know, any building, the most important part of it is its foundation, what it's built upon. That's where much of the strength is coming from. When you think about sports, your foundation, your legs, whatever, you know, your sport may be, whatever your setup is, your stance is always going to be key to whatever movement it is you're doing. Like when you're shooting, you got to have your feet set. If you're a wide receiver on the football field, it's a certain way you got to set your feet. Same for the other side, the cornerbacks. They got to set up with their feet so their foundation can allow them to be, accurate and get the job done. And I just throwing those things out there to get the mind going. Matthew 7 and 24, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, right? The words of the Lord, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine. So you got to hear it. But the furtherance is to understand. And then the furtherance is, as the Lord is about to tell us, you got to do. It says, and doeth them. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man. Right? So you're likening it to a wise man when you fear the Lord. When you know the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, you go forth to perform them. Because that's ultimately the antidote to adverse times. Knowing the Lord, knowing what your strength is. It says, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. So to be built upon the Lord is to be built upon a rock. And that's something that's stern, something that's firm. That's going to hold you down when adversity comes. Continue reading. It's going to pretty much explain it in the scriptures. Verse 25, it says, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew. What that sound like? A storm. But all of these are just symbolic to adverse times, situations, things that you deal with, things that are meant to be an impediment to you, but ultimately a test to the Lord. You know, for you, those of you who are righteous, we're supposed to be able to see adverse times and be able to use wisdom, the Lord's words, to prosper, to get through. So, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house. We're that house. You're that house. All right? Yourself is that house. That's why the scriptures tell you get your house in order. Get yourself together, right? So you're the house. Men are likened into house in the scriptures. Houses in the scriptures. It says, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. So it didn't fall because it was built upon that solid foundation, which is the Lord. So when we hop back to Proverbs 24 and 10, it says, if thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. So we're not supposed to fall or faint, completely go out in the day of adversity. Yeah, you may stumble, you might actually hit the ground, but you know, the goal is to get back up and to continue, keep it moving. You know, because right now, if you can hear, you can see, I'm going to see if you can see. You know, there's not a good time to get out, getting about, you know, try to get things done. If I want to just go on a walk, you know, it wouldn't make the most sense in the world because it's raining, it's storming, you know. So this is an impediment to things that I can be getting done right now, possibly. Not saying that I got anything really to do, it's just for example. But again, do I crash out in a moment and bug out because I can't get done what I thought I needed to get done? Something in my way is stopping me? No. You know, you just tend to the words of the Lord, and that's what's upholding you. Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 5, it says, a wise man is strong. So yeah, a wise man is strong. We just read that. A wise man has strength. Why? Because his mind is kept on the words of the Lord. A wise man is strong. Yeah, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. So a wise man in the time of adversity, he actually increases his strength. He gets stronger. And you see, in many of these dealings that we have, these impediments, they're impediments that happen to us in the flesh. You know, because I don't want to go out, because ultimately, you know, you go get wet, Car accidents happen heavy, and you know, adverse weather. It's just so many things. But really, your mind isn't supposed to be completely zoned into the flesh, because we understand the flesh is a temporal thing. It's not something that's going to be ongoing. It's not something that you can ultimately depend on. So through the Spirit is how we are supposed to be warring, as the scriptures tell us in the book of, I'll just go there, 1 Corinthians, 10th chapter, I believe it is, and that's heavy. It says, avoid Israel's mistakes. But Salaki, that's not what I'm looking for. This is 2 Corinthians. Yep, 2 Corinthians, Salaki. So 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 3, just to get to the point, it says, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. That's the point. So our war isn't after the flesh. So war is an adverse time. It's a time of adversity. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. Salaki. It says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down the strongholds. And many of those strongholds are things that happen within your mind. And we read it in the NLT, 2 Corinthians 10 and 4, it says we use God's mighty weapons. What is that? The words. The word. That's Yahushai. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons, to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. So impediments of the mind. This storm, is happening, but ultimately it's going to pass. And again, the beautiful part of a storm, which is something I've been observing, is the fact that when you actually see a storm, you see this kind of weather, it makes you realize, like a so-called normal day when it's not raining, the sun shining, how much better you have it, how good you have it. I ain't gonna say better you have it, but how good you have it in those days that you're able to get through. And something like this doesn't impede you from, going out to take care of the most simplest task. So it's a lot to be seen within it. Once again, getting to the point of this lesson, which is what? Growth. You're supposed to grow through the storm, through knowledge and wisdom. I know the Lord basically is telling me to sit down right now. Yeah, you got certain things to get done, but, reflecting on the Lord's words and following his, if you will, guidelines, rule book, the scriptures, simply put, I'm going to get through, and I'm going to ultimately be better off by listening to that. 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 3 through 4, I'm going to read that again, and we'll finish up. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down the strongholds. All right? I can read further, but keeping it simple and to the point. So back to Proverbs chapter 24 and 10, if thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. So we're not supposed to faint or fall in the day of adversity, when adverse times come, when these storms come. We ultimately supposed to grow through them, because we're supposed to turn to the Lord and allow him to guide our paths. Proverbs 24 and 5, a wise man is strong. Yeah, our strength comes from the Lord. Yeah, a man of knowledge increases strength. And this is true knowledge that is speaking of, the true knowledge of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Verse 6, for by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war. Again, we don't war in the flesh, but through the Spirit. So these counsels are godly counsels through the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors, there is safety. So that's where you're going to get your safety. That's where you're going to be able to get through adversity, through these words, through these words, but throughout the war, which is a constant war that you're in. You're in a battle for your life. So you have to continue in the Lord's words. Through these storms, these adverse times, ultimately you're supposed to learn. You're supposed to be built up through them so you don't fall, and so you can continue, so you can endure. And we go finish it off in the book of Matthew. We will finish off where we left off at Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 7 And we start reading at 24, which is headed in the Blue Letter Bible, the two foundations. Matthew 7:24 on the NLT, building on a solid foundation. Building is likened to what? Growing, if you will. But Matthew 7:26, and everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not, right, shall be likened unto a foolish man. So when you're not taking heed to the counsel of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai and men that are set up to do so and teach and help guide you, it says, and everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the sand isn't a sure foundation. It's unstable. Verse 27 says, and the rain descended, those storms come. So in the days those storms come, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house. So all this adversity comes to you, and simply you don't know what to do. It says, and it fell. That's you fainting in the day of adversity. And that fall is also when you stand down. It's not the fact that you hit the ground, you rolled, hit your knee, you was down for a few seconds. You didn't get back up. This house not getting back up is what the Lord is saying. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell. It says, and great was the fall of it. See? Great is the fall of it. Meaning it's not going to get back up. So we finish it off where we kicked it off at. Proverbs chapter 24:10. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. So just remember, you're going to have adversity. The day of adversity is ultimately every day, because we got all types of obstacles in front of us regardless of the day, regardless of the storming. You're going to deal with it, but at the end of the day, you got to increase your strength. It's not, your strength isn't supposed to be small. It's supposed to be great and mighty, through the Lord, through the pulling down of the strongholds and imaginations, so you can actually deal with reality. All right? So, you're supposed to grow through storms, because once this storm is gone, the most beautiful thing that you see, and I'll close it out here, is the fact that you see all this greenery is going to be even greener. All this grass that's missing right now, it's going to grow, because storms ultimately bring forth growth, because the beautiful thing is what's coming from out the sky is water, and we know the scriptures are likened it to water, which is needed for life. It's an essential part of life. Without water, you die. So when that rain comes, ultimately, it's spiritual sign that, the Lord's words are, available in a sense. But I'm going to keep it simple. Lord willing, the message, was made, and Lord willing, this could be something useful to the nation. Till next time, shalom.